Imagine it is 16th of March 2013. You're a 52-year-old furniture importer living in Nicosia, Cyprus. You and your wife have spent 26 years building a careful middle-class life. With a white apartment above your shop, you have 2 cars paid off and just over 180,000 euros in the bank from decades of work. Every Friday, you walk past the same bakery, unlock the same metal shutters, and tell yourself that the hard part is over. You believe your money is finally safe. Your daughter is studying in Athens, and your son helps with deliveries on weekends. Your plan is simple. Keep the business steady, retire at 60, and never owe anyone anything again. When people talk about risk, you think of gamblers, not savers, because you did everything the responsible way. You put your trust in the bank, the currency, and the rules. If you have ever wondered why people feel rich yet get ruined, stay with me. What you're about to hear is not a theory, it is a pattern. It has happened before, and it always strips away the same illusion. And if you find value in this kind of historical clarity, subscribing takes 2 seconds and keeps you ahead of what most people never see coming. Then, before the shop opens, your phone lights up. The banks will not open as normal. Deposits above 100,000 euros are suddenly part of the rescue. Cash machines spit out fear in tiny amounts. The number on your bank statement is still there, but the meaning of the number has changed. That is the first thing history teaches about fake wealth. It does not always disappear because thieves take it. Sometimes it disappears because what looked like wealth was never fully yours in the first place. It was a claim on a system, a promise written on paper, stored on a screen, backed by prices, politics, and confidence. And confidence is a strange material. It looks like stone until the day it turns to smoke. This video is about 6 warning signs that people are building wealth that can vanish in a crisis, not because they are foolish or lazy, but because modern financial life makes illusion feel solid. A rising home price feels like savings. A retirement account at record highs feels like security. A large bank balance feels like ownership. A high income feels like strength. Yet history shows, again and again, that some forms of wealth are like a painted door on a theater set. From the audience, it looks like oak. In a fire, it is cloth. Before we go further, understand this. Fake wealth does not mean imaginary wealth. It means wealth that depends on conditions most people do not control. It depends on asset prices staying high, debt staying cheap, banks staying open, and governments honoring every promise. Buyers must always exist when you need to sell. The root cause is simple. Many people confuse price with value. Many confuse access with ownership and borrowed money with real savings. Think of it like a lake in summer. From the shore, the water seems calm, deep, and permanent. But if the lake is fed by one narrow pipe, it lies. The moment that pipe is shut, the waterline falls and the rocks appear. The same happens with wealth in a crisis. The surface may look smooth for years. House prices rise, stocks rise. Credit is easy, salaries are good. Banks promise safety. But beneath the surface, the whole structure may be fed by one fragile stream, cheap debt or foreign money. It could be political trust or endless demand from the next buyer. That is why the 6 signs matter. One sign is when your wealth exists, mostly because prices keep going up. Another is when debt does the heavy lifting. Another is when the money seems liquid but is actually trapped inside a system that can close its gates. Another is when your safety depends on one currency or one government decision. Another is when all your eggs are in one national story, one market, one employer, or one housing boom. The last is when your lifestyle looks rich but your margin for error is thin. A strong tree can survive wind. A tree painted onto a wall looks strong until the weather arrives. The fake wealth is wealth that looks permanent because nobody is testing it. A bridge feels safe when only bicycles cross. The truth appears when trucks arrive. Booms are years when heavy trucks are mistaken for bicycles. Rising prices hide weak cash flow. Easy refinancing hides weak savings. Stable politics hides the fragility of guarantees. That is also why people miss the danger in their own lives. The signals feel respectable. Your house is worth more. Your broker app is green. Your bank balance has more digits. Your salary went up. Friends congratulate you. Family members copy you. Society places a gold frame around the illusion. But history shows that the test of wealth is not admiration. It is endurance under pressure. This brings us directly to Japan in the late 1980s. Millions were told that rising asset prices were proof of strength. The country had become an industrial giant. Exports were powerful. Confidence was everywhere. Between 1987 and 1990, the bubble period took hold. Credit expanded. Land prices surged. Stocks surged. The Nikkei 225 reached 38,157.44 on 29th of December 1989. People thought high prices were normal. This is sign 1. Your wealth looks impressive only because someone else is willing to pay an extreme price for the same asset tomorrow. In Tokyo, land became a national obsession. Offices borrowed against property. Families stretched to buy tiny homes. Banks lent aggressively because the collateral kept rising. That is the trick of a bubble. Rising prices make lenders feel safe, and easier lending pushes prices higher, like mirrors reflecting the same lie. But forever is never the real timeline. The deeper problem was intensified bullish expectations trained by previous rises. Stable consumer prices made the danger harder to see. Everyday inflation was not exploding, so people assumed health. The rot was in the beams, not on the wallpaper. Then the turn came. Stock prices fell, land prices followed. Once prices stopped rising, the wealth that seemed solid began to feel like fog under sunlight. Collateral values dropped, bank balance sheets weakened, borrowers became cautious, spending slowed. The same rising prices that had created the feeling of safety now reversed and pulled the floor away. For ordinary people, this did not look dramatic at first. Collapse is not always a bomb. Sometimes it is quiet shrinking. Salaries stall, promotions disappear. A property bought at the top becomes a heavy stone tied to the ankle. Retirement dreams move farther away each year. The national myth in Japan had been that land was different. They thought a sophisticated country could not be trapped by the oldest financial illusion in history. But price is not protection. A very expensive asset can be the weakest shelter of all. Picture the worker in Yokohama who bought a condominium because everyone believed land could only become scarcer. The monthly payment seemed manageable. The apartment seemed like proof of adulthood. Years later, the loan remained. When asset prices fall slowly, people do not always call it disaster. They call it bad luck or normal life. That is how fake wealth lingers like a ghost. It does not only vanish, it traps families inside ended stories. Japan also exposed a hidden cost. When banks are weakened by falling collateral, they become cautious lenders. Businesses then invest less. Growth slows. Young workers enter an economy with less upward momentum. Fake wealth does not only hurt the buyer at the peak, it leaves a shadow over the next decade. One generation dances under the chandelier. The next generation helps sweep the glass. This is why sign 1 matters. If your wealth depends on market prices, you live in a house where walls are appraisals. Sign 2 sits right beside it. If debt helped create the picture, debt will sharpen the pain when the picture breaks. Leverage is like climbing a mountain on stilts. On the way up, you feel taller. On the way down, the fall is worse. Japan's bubble was fueled by credit growth and a belief that booming assets proved the boom was healthy. When assets turned, the mechanism ran backward. Wealth became a chain of claims on prices that no longer existed. Japan was rich and modern, yet fake wealth formed there because it is a human problem of mistaking floating for building. If the price of your house or portfolio doubled tomorrow, would you actually be safer, or would you simply feel safer? Drop your answer in the comments. What I am about to show you next changes everything. It leads to Argentina. In Argentina in 2001, the illusion was about access. People believed savings and bank accounts were theirs completely. They deposited wages and trusted the system. Then the system closed its hand as bank runs accelerated. In one wave, more than $1.3 billion was withdrawn. In December 2001, the government imposed the Corralito. Cash withdrawals were limited to $1,000 a month. It was like owning water. You could only tap for minutes. This is sign 3. Your wealth is visible on paper, but not reachable when you need it most. Solvent people suddenly could not pay suppliers, wages, or rent. Shop owners saw customers vanish. In January 2002, accounts were frozen and converted. Dollar deposits became peso accounts at a poor rate. The statement still carried numbers. The purchasing power behind those numbers had been torn away. This is sign 4. Your wealth depends on one rulebook staying unchanged. Argentina's problem built for years. The economy tied itself to a $1 peg. Public debt rose. Trust thinned. Savers saw the faucet, not the pipes. When the crisis hit, poverty rose to 58%. Real wages fell sharply. Teachers were paid late. Families cut spending on school and medical checkups. The middle class discovered that status can evaporate. Those who held cash outside the system or had assets abroad had more room to breathe. The careful saver who followed every rule took the deepest hit. History punishes position, not virtue. Argentina shows that a bank balance is not the same as control. Official reassurance is not safety. If your wealth can be frozen or redenominated by institutions, then part of it is a story you're telling yourself. Sign 5 appeared in the US before 2008. Families felt richer because home values kept rising. They refinanced and borrowed against new values. In reality, much of that prosperity was air in a balloon. This is wealth concentrated in one inflated asset that cannot be sold quickly at the price you believe. Sign 6 follows. Your lifestyle rises with the illusion, so a fall in asset values becomes a crisis of daily life. Easy credit pushed up demand and prices. From 2007 to 2011, U.S. home prices fell by more than a fifth. Household wealth dropped by $17 trillion. Between 2007 and 2010, there were 3.8 million foreclosures. Families lost the homes they thought anchored their future. They faced disbelief, denial, and then forced choices. Empty houses sat like broken teeth on suburban streets. When one asset does every job, it becomes a trap. The hardest hit were often households that looked stable but were financially thin underneath. Leverage was the culprit. Wealth built on thin equity is like ice painted white to look thicker than it is. The heat reveals the truth. Japan, Argentina, and the US looked different but showed the same result: confusing rising numbers with durable wealth. First, a system creates comfort. Second, comfort changes behavior. Third, stress hits the hidden weak point. Fourth, people discover that what they owned was partly a claim on continued confidence. Fake wealth depends on calm weather. Real wealth keeps some function when the storm arrives. Can you still eat, move, pay, and wait when the machine is straining? Or were you only rich inside the machine? Signs line up on one wall as leverage, on another as concentration, and on another as political promise. In Weimar Germany, the mark went into free fall. By late 1923, it took trillions to buy $1. Life broke down into barter. The prudent saver was crushed while some indebted asset holders survived. In Cyprus, 2013, large cash reserves were turned into forced bank investments. Liquidity was the real victim. In Greece, 2015, ATM limits created humiliation. Those with obligations that do not pause suffered the most. Historically, survivors had low leverage, flexible expenses, multiple forms of liquidity, and productive assets. Survivors respected real liquidity. They kept more than one bridge out of the burning city. They avoided worshiping leverage. Debt compresses time and turns a bad year into a deadline. They owned things with independent usefulness like productive businesses, skills, or land that generated income. They tended to distrust prestige. A palace on sand still sinks. History rewards clarity and preserving options. In a crisis, optionality is oxygen. If wealth only works in perfect conditions, it is costume jewelry. The world can look unchanged at the very moment your assumptions have already died. Crises rewrite memory. Wealth is a relationship between assets, access, time, and stress. If it vanishes when rules change, it was fragile. This is historical analysis, not financial advice. If someone needs to hear this, share it. Subscribe for more.